speak frank with you. So, I'm a guy from Humboldt Avenue. My family's been around forever. I used to actually work in this building back in the 80s, and right at the doorstep, myself and an old Roxbury guy by the name of Deke Green stopped a stabbing, or didn't stop it, responded to a stabbing where a young kid was in here named Manny was stabbed by another kid in here, and then the kid, took off up the street. And Deke and I were the only ones who ran after the kid, got the knife, convinced him to come back, and so on and so forth. That was in like '88. I got shot in April 27th of 2004. Many of you may know my good, and that crime was never solved. Many of you may know my good friend, Kareem Ali, also known as King Beef, who's one of the big promoters in this city. And when I got shot on April 27th, we hadn't talked, we were playing phone tag. I was trying to call him, and he got shot on May 22nd. And remained in the hospital, never regained consciousness until he died on June 22nd, a month later. Me coming up and going to Boston public schools, I can't tell you how many of my peers I lost in the 80s. One summer, I think it was like 59 murders in one summer, and crack came in, and this is when 9mm first came out, and Uzis, and it was just a very ill time to live through. And like a lot of people have mentioned, I've been through this little cycle here far too many times than I would care to. And quite frankly, I'm a bit sick of a couple of things that I see as illogical errors that does not compute, right? How many of y'all in this room know the definition of insanity? When you repeat the same things and expect a different result. One of the prominent reverends in the city the other day said a line has been crossed. I want to know what line has been crossed that wasn't crossed, that he said, with Tiffany Moore, innocent young girl sitting on top of a mailbox. Trina Passard, another innocent young girl. Jermaine Gaffigan, a little infant baby, not even, 6 months old, right? The 4 kids who were killed in the basement, little rap group. So what line do we need? Maybe we need 25 people to all get killed at the same time and all of them be infants before we really begin to get it. And then there's this little white lady I know does some organization, and she asks a very simple question, logical. Where did the gun come from? How is it that in a community where you got teenagers who come from oftentimes single parent homes who struggling to put ends meet, how come they got on Jordans and they got PlayStations and they got access to a gun? You know how much guns cost? A gun, unless it's real dirty and it's a trash throwaway, or a little 22 or 25, that's gonna run you like $350, $450, and for something really that's gonna do some damage, a little 940 cal, that can go up to like $600, $700. But yet 13 and 14-year-old kids got them, right? And they got no books in school, right? Now the city and the government has time and time again told us about the priority of things. So the priority is education, but the schools ain't got no books. Right? How many times have the police told us that we're working on this issue? And I'm gonna say, straight up, because we're gonna get to the solution thing. I'm gonna give you some nitty gritty, all right? When I think about the analysis, how many people here know what a coon is? A coon, C-O-O-N, right? So a coon is a character that will deface themselves for the pleasure of another person in power. Right? In Black history, we know that it was, that whole syndrome where Black people were making fun of themselves to make white people comfortable, right? Well, I'm here to tell you that nowadays, how the language has turned, our community cannot be relegated and diminished to the level where all Black men are viewed as goons. Goons, right? The goon squad. So we cannot be diminished to the level of goons, and we will not be saved by coons. Now let me explain to you what I mean. While some real stuff is happening in the street, there are those who come and put themselves in the beginning as experts, or they're gonna give you some solutions. Mainly it just is rhetoric. A lot of sloganeering, whatever. They hear this week and then they go on the next. A lot of people, as I've seen in the promotional circles we've been on, sometimes somebody like who's kind of popular, something will happen to them. They cousin, they homie, they friend, they get popped. And for about A week is real serious. Monday, they boo-hooing and crying and Facebook posting. And Saturday, they right back in the club, shaking it and dropping it, right? So where are we gonna have a sustained movement? And what people are talking about here, we're talking about how we're gonna elevate the kids. Our brother Carlos came up here and told us how many kids is in the Boston public school system. I can tell you that the only thing that is gonna change the trajectory of these young people's lives is what we call knowledge of self, right? Ain't no religion gonna save you. But when you know, when somebody said it here, when you know better, you do better, right? But yet, our history has been stripped out of the schools. The budgets are torn out of the schools, and people are like wondering why these kids are going willy-nilly. Now, one thing, we often too in facing these tragedies, we don't want to lay the blame anywhere. People are like, well, it's not time, to blame or whatnot. But if anybody here has ever boxed, or if anybody here is a football fan, when you lose a game, what does the coach make you do? Review the tape over and over again. It's painful because they're going to point out, man, you went left here, you should have went right. Look at you, that was stupid. But yet, and still, in this city, it seems that we don't want to have an honest dialogue, and we've never did an analysis and a critique of what went wrong. We always talk about filling in the cracks, but we ain't trying to identify where the cracks are. Now, some of what we've heard up here, Brother Carlos, John Conley, they said, well, you got to engage the elected officials and you got to go to them and say what's missing. I don't think there's anybody who has done that more than I have. I have written letters to the mayor, to the police commissioner. I've put videos on YouTube describing it quite simply. No response. Now, here's the ill thing. I've talked to Dr. Carol Johnson, tried to get into the schools with myself, and it ain't just me, myself and other people that I know, many of whom in this room, Cornell Mills. Raise your hand if you've done some work with me before, some community organizing. Cornell Mills, Vernon Robinson, Carlos Enriquez, Sali, Angela, Stephanie, the Sisters of United Sisters of Color, Councilor Charles Yancey has been helpful. Mr. Connolly, Councilor Connolly has been helpful. So there are times when we are able to work together, but it's not enough, it's not sustained, and oftentimes people are like, well, we don't know about Jamal, what's he gonna say? But meanwhile, Lil Wayne, 50 Cent got unfiltered access to your kids' brains. Right. Meanwhile, they can stay up past midnight and watch HBO and just watch R-rated movies and all this crap. They can go on video game and kill 1 million people, but you worried about what Jamal might say. As if I'm known to be a liar. All I do is regurgitate and repeat what I have been taught, because it is about each one, reach one, teach one. I'm trying to pass on what I was taught by people with brains way bigger than mine. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. The reason oftentimes we don't know what to do is because we do not study and we do not research. If you're concerned about violence, study violence. If you're concerned about politics, study politics. You may just develop an analysis and figure out some of these things. So here's a couple of little things that I came up with off the top of my dome. So one, well, how do we stop the crime? Well, correct me if I'm wrong, officers in the back. I'm not making fun. I'm being real talk serious. There's a term that the city has used. It's called hotspots. Now, I don't like that term, because terms like that are code words and buzzwords, and it begins to diminish and devalue our life. Like the hood. When you're from the hood, you don't get what everybody else gets, because you've already pigeonholed yourself into the hood, so you get the hood treatment, right? Right. So what I'm talking about is when these labels like hotspots, these buzzwords, right, they come out, okay, so a hotspot. So the city has already defined where these hotspots are. And if that ain't enough, all you gotta do is go to the Boston Globe and there's a murder map. Have y'all seen the murder map? Goes all the way back to about 2008, right? The murder map. And it shows a Google map with a little pin dot of wherever the violence was. There's even more statistics that you can get from places like BPD News and whatnot that actually will tell you not just the shootings, but the stabbings, the crimes, purse snatching, muggings, rapes, aggravated assaults and whatnot. So, I don't know much, little computers and stuff. It don't take a genius to database this stuff, and we know where the problems are. So let's put some police there. And I'm not an advocate for police. Let's put a kiosk in the hot spots. If we got in a small city like Boston, where I can walk from Mattapan Square all the way about the city to Harvard University in like an hour and a half, and I ain't got no walkie-talkie, I don't have no cruisers, I don't have cameras and computers and 2,000 people behind me and no gun and all this satellite technology, I don't got all that, I don't got no budget. But if a couple of organizers can crisscross the city in that manner, and I find it very difficult that this mayor and this police commissioner and this police department cannot put a better handle on where these hotspots are. And I think if we put those kiosks in these areas and put 2 officers there, now what they're gonna say is, well, we don't have the manpower or whatever. So once again, solutions. You got a whole bunch of little fresh, freckle-faced, baby breath milk, people coming out the academy all the time. How about these little cadets and whatnot, their first assignment is manning a kiosk in the neighborhood? Sound about right? Don't take much, don't have to be no bigger than a bus shelter. 2 cops stationed where the hot spot is, with a couple of cops who got walkie-talkies, who can call in if they hear. Then we already got ShotSpotter, but they can call in. And even if they only man it from the hours when trouble is likely to jump off, 2 in the afternoon to maybe 3 in the morning, right? That's a little bit over 12 hours, right? Even if they man it at that time, and then when they leave, there's a little blue phone out there. You know those little blue police phones that you see in places where they care about the people who live there? You know those blue phones? So something like that on a kiosk, where even when they're not there, somebody could pick that up and say, yo, this is what's up. Okay? So that's one idea. Well, we don't got the manpower, so we use the cadets. If that ain't enough, in an economy the way it is, where people are scrambling looking for jobs, right? How many of y'all have seen the crossing guards? You ever noticed that they wear Boston police uniforms, but they're not really Boston police? So then what you do is you hire new people, civilian people who can act as, a civilian form of the police. Once again, they don't need to have a gun or whatnot, they can have radios. You put that in concert with the bike patrols. How many of y'all have seen the increased activity with the bike patrols in the community? So that's all right, that's a good little start. And once again, I'm not an advocate for police, but it's a good start. So if you got a kiosk here, and you got a couple of officers who's going up and down the strip, now watch this. Carlos, you remember when we tried to get Blue Ave cleaned up? Seems like a good thing. Let's stop the prostitution. Let's put a curb on the violence. We got empty lots that are filled with dope needles and broken bottles. Business people who are in this community trying to do business, some are scared and won't get the hell out. And they gotta come to their business every day and sweep up condoms from in front of their business. We try to get it cleaned up. How receptive was the city initially to that? What seemed like a simple neighborhood request? Not so receptive. And if that man couldn't get it done, who at that time was working with DSNI and was a respectable community leader, not like me, who's known to be a rabble-rouser. If he couldn't get it done at that time, and we pushed, we wrote, we called, and we had some meetings, but it wasn't with this open arms like you see now in the newspaper the other day where they said, cleaning up Blue Hill Avenue block by block. Right? Y'all seen it, right? So I'm not making none of this stuff up. Certain areas in the city, I believe Councilor Carnley could attest to this. If there was a murder that happened in West Roxbury on VFW Parkway, the response would be immediate. Believe me. And unfortunately, I gotta tell you, I'm gonna wind it up. And unfortunately, I'm gonna tell you this, but in this American society, it's an ugly truth, but a truth nonetheless. The lives of Black and brown, Black, Latino, and Cape Verdean people are just not worth the same as white life in this country and society. It just ain't the same. That's why when a little white kid goes missing, stop the presses. Black kids go missing, not so much. White girl gets shot by the Boston police by mistake in the eye with a rubber bullet. The case, the settlement was all done, investigation all done within a year and a half. We still ain't got word on our stuff, right? When we got murder or you got stuff that gets solved and it gets messed up in the courtroom because the DA or whatever can't sit the case. It does not imbibe people with a whole bunch of confidence in the system, particularly with our history in the country, when we know the times that we have strove to do good, they found a way to undermine it. Sister Nomadic there got a Black Panther shirt on. How many of y'all know what the government's response to the Black Panthers was? Besides locking them up and shooting up the offices, it was to flood the community with heroin. When I came up in the 80s and in the early 90s, our community was flooded with crack cocaine. Let's see, how many of y'all got your thinking cap on? How many of y'all know what was discovered in Congress where the crack cocaine came from? Y'all know? The CIA planted cocaine, crack cocaine in South Central Los Angeles. If I'm lying, I'm flying. Google is a hell of a thing, so don't believe nothing I say. Go home and Google it, right? In our community, in this city, while we can sit here and hope for the best and kumbaya and all that, just know that whatever we do, there are forces who are working. For every action, there is a reaction. In this city, the people who do not want to see us do well, their biggest fear is our unity. Because if we come together, if the Black people can unite, Haitians, Jamaicans, and we link up with the Puerto Ricans and the Dominicans, and we link up with the Cape Verdeans, and we stretch over there to Dorchester, we link up with the Vietnamese and the Koreans. Do you know what that means? Because this is a quote-unquote majority-minority city, right? We run this, but we don't act like it. Right. So it's time for us to take it back to the blocks. As many people have said, those of y'all who got influence, young men, I'm gonna tell you right now, I've been trying to start this campaign for years. It's not popular, but violence is a fact of life. Everybody ain't gonna get along. So one commitment I wanna make is to say, take it back to the hands. Whatever happened to good old black eye, and the fact that, but the problem is that there's too many people who can't stop there. You can't just bubble up and throw the ones no more. Now I gotta come back because you beat me up. Now I gotta shoot you, then you gotta shoot my, it's crazy. We gotta de-escalate it a little bit. Put our eyes on the prize, figure out who and what the real enemy is, and the real enemy in the city of Boston and all across America, from Boston to Compton, is poverty, is the lack of education. And I ain't talking about just the education you got in your school, but the type of education that you're gonna have to get yourself and they ain't gonna give it to you. All right? And we gotta get out here and be serious. Who is willing to sacrifice and give of themselves beyond the rhetoric? Would you literally take your shirt or off of your back to give to somebody? Will you feed somebody if you gotta be a little bit hungry? Would you give your 10% of your little punk check that you get every week to build some schools for these kids? If we ain't got a rec center, let's build one. Let's get with the councilors and retake some of this abandoned property like the city of Boston used to do back in the day, and reuse some of these abandoned houses in these neighborhoods. We know where the stuff is at. Humboldt, Heath Street, Academies, OP, Franklin Field, Franklin Hill. It ain't rocket science. And these places ain't that big. And these goons ain't that tough. Right. So let me tell you, I ain't scared. But what we gotta do is go out there and raise an army, a coalition of the willing. Folks who's really, really gonna be bout it. Many of us, once again, these brothers, we've been there before. We tried this. We had the Black Men's Leadership Group. And the first thing I did is have a talk with these brothers was like, y'all ain't real, and half of y'all gonna leave, and da-da-da-da-da. And what happened? Half of them fell by the wayside, because it wasn't sexy for 2 weeks. We gotta put our mouth where our money is. Alright? We gotta put our mouth where our money is. You heard what I'm saying? Because we spend, and we talk. Who's rapping? You see Benzino on Real Housewives, and all this stuff. But when it comes about the stuff that matters, we ain't got no time for that. I'm gonna end it there. I just want to say for those who are really about doing some work, some stuff where there ain't no glory in it, you're not gonna get paid. You're not gonna need a little sexy little boo-boo. None of that. It's just hard work. No thanks, no nothing. But the thanks comes from the gratification when you see some of these young men, young women that you may have interacted with when they're younger, and they're older now, and they say, yo, you know what? Good looking out. And they still alive and kicking. So let's get to work. Please, Liz, J. Simone, let's figure a way to keep this the information flowing so that we can really do what everybody does in the meetings and be like, we're gonna be in contact with you. Right? But this time, let's really stay in contact. Anybody want my info? I'm here for you. I'm your brother. Please.